Today I would like to explore the question of self-destruction. After experiencing my mother's suicide when I was 8 years old and my own intent when I was 27, I joined a cult for 16 years, as pervasive as any other, and when I left I explored suicide cults for a long time, finding there are parallels between suicide cults and suicide in individuals. The way I'd like to approach this subject is by talking about the structure of individuals and societies and showing that there are ideal models for life to be possible or for processes of corruption and crime to take place. The structure of an individual from this perspective is that of a realm of the self, in which the self and personality take place, the realm of being, rather, in which personality and the self take place, and functions, intellectual, emotional, sexual, moving, and instinctive function. Each of these functions belongs to a wholesomeness. The instinctive function in the body belongs to nature. Nature is the integrity that that particular function in an individual belongs to. But nature also belongs to society at large and represents the economic sphere in which all individuals are trying to survive. The moving function in the individual belongs to the realm of space. Space also participates in our social realm inasmuch as we're all trying to move the territory, how we use it, how it's distributed, how we each get enough of nature to be able to feed ourselves, have a place to live in, shelter. The sexual function represents life. It's the possibility of keeping the species alive. And life here is seen as an objective integrity in which in which sexuality for human beings is the condition to keep it going. The emotional function in an individual is connected to feelings, and the integrity of feelings in this perspective is love. Love, in this case, would be understood as an integrity as complex as nature. I realize we don't tend to think like that. We think that the human being lives in nature and this is the only wholesomeness that human beings have to survive in. But from this perspective, love represents a wholesomeness that is as complex as nature. And people are developing emotionally in their capacity to integrate. Love is basically the capacity to integrate with a partner, in a family, in the workplace, in the academy, and in society at large. The other aspect, the other function that we're going to be looking at is the intellectual function. The intellect in an individual is the capacity to live by certain principles, to reason, and to structure a life according to certain principles. This realm in society is the realm of the laws, the realm of politics. What principles do we abide by so as to be able to live in society? Now, all these functions depend on the consciousness with which an individual acts and lives. Consciousness, from this perspective, is the quality of the self. And personality is conscious, but conscious of things, of functions. Its conscious personality develops fully in the experience of our lives from the moment we're born. And it integrates the whole of the world from outside and synthesizes, however, in our inner being, in our personality. People think that personality is something that forms from within us. Perhaps it structures itself with a similar structure as we ourselves are structured. But everything that develops it is coming from the outside. We become a nationality, German, French, Argentinian, Colombian, Spanish, or African, because the outside world defines us. And we become everything else that comes from our family, the academies we go to, the immediate societies we experience. And we introvert all that and form a personality that is both an integrity between the outside world and the world within. The world within is an integrity, able to heal and overcome and reintegrate every trauma and tragedy. And it does so because it is able to fill an individual with its own force, with its own power, with its own beingness. I would like to mention that each function throughout our lives is trying to integrate itself with the ideal, and it uses society to be able to realize that integrity, those ideals. It has to go through all the institutions to be able to realize itself, to be able to realize knowledge, love, and to survive physically. The way our societies are structured allow us to go through these processes and reach our goals. Or they don't. Or they only allow it for some in societies that are basically structured from competition between each other instead of from sharing. But if we look at the structure of society, what we'll find is a very similar structure. At the top, in the realm of being of a society, so to speak, we find the nation. The nation is an abstraction that actually represents humanity as a whole, but we are not there yet. In that abstraction of a nation that is an ideal for which people die, for which the military exist to protect, in that ideal that is also a representation of the idea of paradise, unity in which all human beings can develop harmoniously. That is the ideal. But within a nation, we also have a secondary identity that is the authority of the nation. This authority, as we know, represents all people, the will of all the nationals. And inasmuch as that is true, the authority represents the wholesomeness and the integrity of the nation that is meant to be able to provide life and guarantees for everyone to survive. I personally believe that we are upside down and backwards to life, and that we are in a similar process of self-destruction as individuals follow in their own process of suicide. And we are basically doing this process of self-destruction in the destruction of nature that is our common body. Like an individual, societies could heal if this integrity that is meant to take place at all levels were possible. If authorities in power understood that the ideal of the role is to be able to provide enough resources for people to survive physically, enough love for people to stop competing with each other to death, to get a job, to survive, and enough knowledge for people to live under legitimate laws. I think individuals today are expecting the authority to take charge and provide people with everything we need in a very paternal social structure. And parents cannot provide everything for a child. They must allow the child to grow and empower them. So must nations. And our nations are systematically disempowering people so that everyone works for a minority, not only in political power, but in every institution. Everyone is meant to provide economically for these minorities in charge of our multiple institutions. And that is a process in which the elite of each institution, not only politically but religiously and economically, is swallowing up the energy and the resources and the efforts everyone is making only to keep themselves in place. And that is a very normal, instinctive mammal behavior. But human beings are not mammals. Human beings can develop their full integrity and realize themselves in their full humaneness. Thank you.